All right, hey everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Fort Wayne Local Podcast. I'm your host, Jake McAfee. Today, our special guest is Riley Johnson. Riley, how you doing?
Hey, Jake. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump in, I just want to remind everybody, you can subscribe to the Fort Wayne Local Podcast on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or really anywhere you consume your podcasts. And if you hear an episode and you like it, please share it. You know, that definitely helps us out a lot. We're trying to spread the word and give Fort Wayne a voice. And I think the people is going to be how that happens. So just a reminder to do that. So, okay, I'm going to do a quick background on you, Riley, and then we'll kind of jump in. So Riley is the new director of the Fort Wayne Community Schools program at Electric Works. He began in education as the founding teacher of the New Tech Academy at Wayne High School. He then moved to Napa, California to become the principal of New Technology High School, which was the flagship school for the New Tech Network. Real quick, what is the New Tech Network and the New Tech Academy?
Yeah, so New Tech Academy on a local scale is a school within a school model at Wayne High School. But it is a part of the New Tech Network, which is a national organization of about 225 schools that really share a core in terms of student-centered culture, project-based learning, and really trying to transform the outcomes of public education. And so the New Tech Network is a nonprofit that kind of helps schools and districts implement those practices. And so that's what my connection to lead me out to Napa was through my work here local at New Tech Academy early on when it opened.
Okay, great. And so Riley's traveled the world as a project-based learner and a student of innovative learning environments. He was named the Computer Using Educator Site Leader of the Year in 2018. And he recently moved his family back to Fort Wayne in 2019, where he served as an administrator for Fort Wayne Community Schools for the last 2 years. So the reason we're here today, I've been a big fan of Electric Works. I found it fascinating from the beginning, the ups, the downs. A lot of our listeners feel the same way. So you are spearheading Fort Wayne Community Schools' role in Electric Works. Is this correct?
Yeah. So it's an ever evolving project, but essentially the school district is committed to having a program housed on that campus, and with a target open date of not next school year, but August of 2022 when construction's done. So I'm super stoked about what the next year looks like to get ready for that.
Okay, and why did Fort Wayne Community Schools want to be a part of this? Why Electric Works?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's been a long time, and I can't speak to specific dates, but since Fort Wayne Community Schools has built a new building, and so when I think the Electric Works project, right, anybody that's followed the last decade of the ups and downs, the maybes, I think once it was a go the first time, I think Fort Wayne Community Schools knew if there was going to be an opportunity to be a part of a transformational project like this, and there was going to be an educational component, that they needed to be at the forefront of that and really challenge itself at what role it can play, because right, Electric Works is in the heart of FWCS's district, and really is a potential linchpin for that community, but also the city as a whole. And so I think from a school perspective, I think the district saw that this was a great opportunity to really expand the type of opportunities that youth in our city have when it comes to school.
Okay. And that does tie in with, bringing Electric Works back and bringing more opportunity to the area. And then, like you said, if Fort Wayne Community Schools was looking for a new building, it sounds like it all just kind of fit right together, where like this just makes sense. And then the city's investing in itself and in its own project while accomplishing a goal that the district sounded like it needed anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you think about this kind of transformational shift of the role education should play in a community, you're really starting to see, you know, the traditional model, right? When we were in school, it was the currency you got was grades and your diploma. And I think in the modern world, that currency is really shifting, and the opportunity to make school about economic mobility and economic opportunity, the convergence of where FWCS is headed and what Electric Works will be, kind of was both entities were coming together at the right time. And so it just really, I think, creates the platform for this program to not only serve as a model locally for how we can really train, recruit, retain our own talent, but also, you know, how that blueprint can really impact Greater Allen County and Northeast Indiana and so forth.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in on this. You know, we were laughing when we did our first call on the phone, and I was getting all fired up talking about it, and I was like, man, I should just save this for the pod. But so kind of just to give people an idea of what you're talking about, like what's your vision for the school's role?
Yeah, so the evolution of the program, and it continues to evolve every day. Anything that's really in the developmental stage is going to have new layers and elements, but you don't put a school or a program on a campus like that if the main goal of it was to not create experiences and opportunities connected to the other businesses and organizations located in that same space. And so I think flipping the experience on its head, right, where a lot of times we start with in education, right, what are your desired outcomes? Really, you know, my vision or my goal is really starting with the experience. You know, because I'm a big believer, if I can help create an environment that empowers students to solve real problems with real people, those outcomes will come with it. And so for me, I think, you know, our vision and our desire is really how do we create structures and processes for students of all backgrounds to come to the Electric Works campus and engage with the community, whether that be at the biggest level, a do it best, whether that be from a creative lens in Sweetwater or you know, St. Francis's music technology program, or whether it be at the most grassroots level with a nonprofit that works on sustainability through beekeeping, right? Creating a system and structure that students can really engage with those partners to really attack problems that our community faces and those organizations face with a fresh lens. Because I think so many times school is a separate entity from life, right? It's one of those things where as a 17-year-old, you go, you follow kind of a set structure, and you are rewarded for following kind of that set structure. And so for me, with our opportunity we have at Electric Works is really to shift that monkey and really say, like, what if we tried to remove every barrier that ever existed for student learning? And instead of distilling things down to really simple layman terms, kept those problems at really high, complex levels, and then gave students the time, tools, and resources to try and tackle them, knowing that they're not going to solve every problem, and knowing that there's going to be a lot of problems where they're co-constructing with a partner, and the partner is not asking them to do it by themselves. But that perspective and that freedom that a lot of times is missing in education generally shows that students are going to actually exceed any expectation we would ever have.
That's great. So just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying it's going to be geared towards, like, instead of, diagramming sentences or something like that, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's not for, I don't think it's necessary for every single student that goes through. You're saying you're trying to have programs where they're going to be solving real world problems, something that they might face if they took a job at, Do It Best, or, something else that's, one of those anchor tenants there, and getting them both learning, but while seeing real world experience, almost like an internship, while simultaneously creating connections that they may otherwise not have had, especially people, at lower income levels, where it's like they're coming out of school, maybe they worked hard, maybe they didn't, but then it's like, then they're just kind of like, there you go figure it out. Where if it's like, if they know, 15, 20 employees at some of these companies downtown, they may have established connections that might help them get a job that otherwise they'd have even no into finding. Am I correct in that kind of assessment?
Yeah. So I think in leveraging the innovative spirit of Electric Works, I think you're spot on in the, it's really about the convergence of all of this shared experience. So students are going to have to become learners in areas they never thought they would, but they're also going to have to leverage prior knowledge. So, something they learned in a statistics class that they thought they might not ever use, they're now pulling that knowledge they gained and applying it to a new context. But also that idea that, for me, we already have some amazing programs in our community that really help students specialize in a specific area, whether that's in any of the 5 high schools or at the Career Academy downtown. And so for this program at Electric Works, whether it's an 8th grader coming to kind of experience something hands-on, or it's a senior trying to decide what they're going to do next, I think really creating those opportunities, like you said, for them to get cross-cutting skill sets and cross-cutting experiences. So no matter what they decide to do after high school, they kind of have a value add, no matter what direction they go.
That's great. That's great. And I feel like just the exposure, I remember when I was young, I said, I'm going to be a veterinarian. And I shadowed my friend's mom, who was fortunate enough, one day. And I was like, no, not a vet. I'm not a vet after one day.
Right.
So I feel like just getting some exposure to different things can really help guide on what you like. It's just like life.
Well,
you taste and you figure out what you like,
Yeah. Well, and right now, kind of the core looks like it's molding to where it's going to not be a standalone 4-year high school, but it's going to be a 2-year junior senior experience that pulls a diverse cross section from all of the 5 Fort Wayne high schools. And to that extent, kind of the direction we're thinking is that junior year is really going to be about exposure and applied skills, right? Where I might have a project where I work with Fort Wayne Metals for 6 weeks, and then the next project I'm working with Windrose Urban Farm. So a really diverse experiential kind of portfolio. And then that senior year, after a student kind of touches all of these areas, you might see a senior gain an internship with a partner they had junior year, or you might see them latch onto a project that they know there's more under the surface, and so they spend their entire senior year partnering with one company or organization doing a really deep dive into that problem. Or even better, right? A student works with 5 businesses as a junior, and they see, hey, here's an opportunity for a new idea. And so they can kind of pursue what would it look like to become an entrepreneur and launch my own venture. And so we're really looking at how do we create that diverse, unique exposure as a junior that then lets them really dive into a specific skill set or area as a senior once they've kind of touched multiple places.
And are you far enough along to know how someone's going to be worthy of this program, or how you're going to choose? Is it
Yeah,
a lottery
no.
or what?
So no, but I can make some hypotheses. So
Mm.
it is going to be as most of an accurate representation of Fort Wayne Community Schools as it can be. So obviously, we're still trying to figure out kind of what the threshold is in terms of number. How many students can it actually support? But no matter what, you know, we're looking at, hey, how do we have an algorithm that matches the gender makeup of the district, the socioeconomic makeup? How is each school represented equitably to its total population? So not maybe necessarily the same spots for every school, but you know, spots in comparison with total enrollment size. And then I'm always a big believer that there should never be a barrier to entry. Now, you know, this kind of goes into the bad side, for me at least, of education, right? Is there is this credit animal. And so if a student is behind on credits after their freshman and sophomore year, we're going to have to come up with some creative ways to make sure that they can stay on track to graduate high school, but still not be disqualified from participating in an experience like this. Because a lot of times those type of students, the ones that struggle in a traditional school setting, are the ones that need something like this most desperately. And so that's really, you know, for me is kind of circling back, the least amount of barriers that we can put in place, the better, because I'm always a believer that your 4.6 GPA student that's gonna go to any college they could ever want deserves opportunities like this. And your student that's hated school since they were in third grade deserves an opportunity like this. So making sure that the system is developed and structured that allows both of those kids to have an entry point is really, really important in this next year of getting to that point.
That's great. Yeah. And that's such a good point too, with, you know, like you said, like you want to make sure you have standards, but at the same time, like the kid who needs this most might be the one, like you said. I mean, I can think of specific people who I knew who were bad students who have gone in life to be, you know, business owners or very high up in other organizations. Not that that's the only metric of success, but if I had told you that when they were kids, you would have said no way.
Right.
But they just, you know, it's all about fit, you know, and I feel like they just needed to find their fit and, you know, what matched their characteristics and interests. And it's, so that probably is going to be one of the hardest things, is identifying like who gets to participate in this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, you know, one thing we're working on right now is what is that learning experience like before a student would decide? So how do we make sure we have the opportunities and the resources for students and parents and teachers and counselors to understand, you know, what is a day in the life going to look like at the Electric Works program, so that students kind of have a you never know till you live it, but at least they're walking in with a kind of a good idea that, hey, if I do this, these are potential opportunities that I'm going to get from participating. And I think on the flip side of that, you've got no formula that determines what a right fit is. And so, like you said, I think it's really important not to make that guess before a kid is given the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, well, especially, you know, you've said from the beginning, this is supposed to be different and this is supposed to be innovative. And if you're judging like the old, you're kind of just carrying over the same formula. So in order to rethink it, but that's going to be hard too, because then you have to have standards, or else like you can't, that'd be excluding someone who may have loved the opportunity. So that's probably a huge part of this, is figuring out how you're going to, you know.
Yeah. So we've looked at a couple variety of ways, right? Where, you know, maybe in the very beginning, they introduced kind of 4 potential pathways with urban farming, animation, entrepreneurship, and music. And so we've explored, do we have kind of some specialized class structures? Sometimes that's harder because then you got to find the right classes, the right credits, all of that. The other direction we've talked about is, what if we take a pathway like entrepreneurship that's very open-ended and very much at the high school level about building entrepreneurial mindsets and entrepreneurial processes. And then, like I said, letting the focus happen after that. And so students will still get credits. They'll still be on track to meet the graduation pathways of the state of Indiana, but they'll be able to do it in a much more progressive format than being, self-contained to say, oh, I'm only this type of student. I can't, how dare I explore something outside of that little bubble, and thinking, what if we flip that? So same thing as you said, one thing that we've thrown around is obviously at this point, students still need a letter grade on their transcript. But we said, like, what if the way progress is tracked is not with grades along the way? So what if students and teachers co-create a portfolio that shows what that student knows? And the idea of, getting a grade on a homework assignment disappears from the world. Because, I laugh as we think about the real world and we think about your and I's life. Like, I don't get a letter grade every day when I go home from work. My ability to contribute and my ability to adapt and evolve as a professional is then what produces that quality outcome for me. And I think, we're at a place where there's pockets of educational entities starting to really challenge the narrative of homework and paper test and yada, yada. But I think here in Fort Wayne, this project at Electric Works really might be the first opportunity for us to, say, hey, we need to follow and we need to respect what the Department of Education says meets the threshold of a student gaining credit. But we don't have to do that the same way. And we don't have to do it the way people think it has to be done, because this is our chance to create a unique and, in my eyes, better experience for kids.
Yeah, this is, man, you are speaking my language here. Like, I feel like I wasn't a bad student by any means, but, a B to an A, I was like, I just didn't care. It was like, whatever, I can just wing it and get my B. But when it comes to work and, with me, it's real estate, I'll work as much as my wife will let me. I love it. Like, and I enjoy it, and I put everything I have into it. But there's like a bigger payoff to me, which is not only money, but, building relationships, stuff like that. And I feel like, to me, I'm hesitant to be critical of school because I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I never want them to be insulted. I don't think it's them. I think it's more the system that needs change. Like, it's becoming more antiquated by the day in my eyes. And to me, I'm hearing that this is like the first step to exploring what other options we have before disrupting the whole thing. But like, hey, let's just do some little incubator tests. And then I'm sure there's going to be tons of tweaking as you do this, and assessing how it went and what we could have done better and, stuff like that. But this is really exciting, man. I'm getting fired up again, like I did on the phone.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It's just something that's bothered me for a really long time. And so to hear, but I've done nothing about it. So, I can't complain too much, but, so where are you drawing inspiration from then? Like you have said we a few times, like, do you have like a board or a task force or?
Yeah. So there's kind of three layers to that question. So internally in Fort Wayne community, there's a small handful of people that either by role or by relationship, I'm leveraging on for feedback, support, ideas. I'm also a big believer in if this is supposed to be for our community, then I need to leverage on people in the community And so whether that be someone like Dan Swartz with Start Fort Wayne, or whether Adam Welch at Greater Fort Wayne, just to name a few, or some people that I might just say, hey, will you look at this? Tell me what you think. Hey, what if we did this? So really leveraging that community infrastructure, and that will grow into an advisory layout, because for this to be successful, we're going to have strong relationships with businesses and organizations, and I'm going to have to be able to mobilize people to work hand in hand with these students on a regular basis. And so leveraging that is really important. And to be frank, I think there's a lot of momentum in Fort Wayne right now, but historically, there's a lot of really great people and really awesome organizations that have sometimes struggled to figure a way to bring their conflicting ideas or their conflicting priorities together. And so, I look at this program not only as a cornerstone for the Electric Works campus, but also a potential cornerstone for maybe some synchronization to happen in that space. And then third, I'm a big believer that nothing is new, right? A lot of times the best ideas are either co-constructed from something else, or a lot of little bits and pieces taken from a lot of different places and repurposed in a new context. And so we're looking at both, in the education space, where are there are examples of communities that have attempted something similar. So good example, Des Moines, Iowa has a program that really challenges the same idea around, what if we ask businesses and organizations to bring their problems to us? And there's a school in the Cleveland, Ohio area that's completely gotten rid of the traditional grading system. And there's a school in San Diego, California that really prioritizes work-based learning and skill development. And so for me, I'm blessed that I have a lot of strong relationships in the global education space. So really, it's learning as much as we can about those places and thinking about what works there, and is there something that would be a value add for our community here in Fort Wayne? And then how does it work in the context of what the program at Electric Works will look like? And so really those kind of juggling those three balls is really kind of important for me, because I'm a big believer as a leader. It's my job to create the space and provide the resources and empower the people, and then get out of the way. It's not about what I think should happen there. It's about making sure that I'm doing everything in my power to bring together an amazing experience, and then do everything to protect it and support it, so that the awesome teachers, the awesome support staff, and the students can do their thing. And so I think by building and looking in those three areas, we're off to a good start.
That's great. Are you stressed out about this? Because this feels like a massive amount of responsibility.
No, so it's funny. It's one of those things where, like, I think my experience, right, both as a teacher in a school, my first year of teaching was in year one of New Tech Academy at Wayne. And so I got to really experience what incubating a program looks like from the classroom lens. And like you said, all 5 years that I was in the classroom were drastically different experiences. And so that really set the tone for me personally. And then going to Napa and being, you know, when I moved to Napa, the school I was at was only 18, 19 years old. But in the world of school reform and small school, that's an old animal. And what I learned there was it was really kind of the fourth iteration of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And it had developed kind of a life cycle where, okay, about every 4 or 5 years, it needed a rebirth. And I think those experiences kind of helped me think, you know, how do I make sure that everything that needs to be taken care of before August 22 is, but not everything's going to be done. And so I think it's myself, but also what I've learned really, really early in this process is for me to not get overwhelmed or stressed, I've got to think about what are those potential barriers or what are those potential curveballs that might come in the next year and prepare for them ahead of time. And I think, yeah, that's so in a roundabout way to answer your question, I think my stress or fear comes from it. What if it's not good enough? Like, what if it's not what it should be? Or what if it's not what it could be? Those are probably the two things that I fixate on the most, that I gotta sometimes just be okay saying, you know what, it's good enough and it's what it should be right now. And we always have the opportunity to evolve and adapt as it grows.
Sure. And I think that ties into what we were talking about before with some of our criticisms of traditional education are that it's so rigid and doesn't change, where, like you said, I guess it takes some pressure off if you're giving yourself the freedom to say, all right, this went well, but this did not. Like, we shouldn't have done this, but now we know, you know, we'll do it this way or something like that. I think that's where the opportunity lies.
Well, and I think education is such a weird space because there's so many things that are either cyclical or when you talk about them, they only apply to a school space. Mm-hmm. That I think burrowing away or chipping away at things to the core. I think the only thing that matters is the student experience. And you can attach learning, you can attach mastery, whatever buzzword you want to attach to it. But at its core, if we focus solely on what that student's experience is and what it could be, and we learn from the students themselves, we're only gonna make an amazing place, but we're gonna grow and evolve based off the needs of the students that are there on a daily basis.
I like that. I mean, that's kind of the same thing we do on my end in real estate. It's like we begin with the client in mind and what's best for them, and then you just reverse engineer it back, and it sounds like you're doing the same thing. Like, all right, what's best for them? And then we'll figure out a path to get there instead of just creating the path and saying, this is just what we think.
Yeah.
So where are you, like, what stages are you in right now? Like, what are you working on this week, or if you're comfortable sharing, or like, what's
So
day-to-day
so
like?
we're very much in the, I'd call this the validation stage. And what I mean by that is new ideas or new elements are popping up daily. And it's really, how do we validate those? And either, yes, it's something we should consider following and pursuing more deeply, or no, let's go a different direction. And so right now we're really kind of looking at two paths. One, what does that day-to-day student experience look like? So we're starting to really draft up some processes and structures that students will engage with on a daily basis. But then we're also navigating some of the logistical pieces, like, anytime you're bringing kids from a home high school to a different place, you have to think about how many buses do you need? When are those buses going to leave? How many kids can the building actually hold, and how many kids are we going to start with year one? So right now, the beauty is we've kind of finalized the 2021 school year. So the shoe's on the other foot in terms of really starting to see what that looks like. And so I think that like where we're at now, to summarize, is to use the analogy, is we're living both on the balcony and the dance floor. So we're up at the balcony looking at okay, what does the partnership structure look like? So in 5 years, it's sustainable. But on the dance floor, we're looking at what color do the chairs need to be, right? So really living in both of those spaces is every day is different.
Sure. And are you, and but that would, by the way, that was a very diplomatic way to say there's a lot of people giving you your opinion. That was well done on that one. But are you receiving any opposition? Because thinking outside the box isn't always welcome with open arms. Like, where are you getting? You don't say names or anything, obviously. But
no, yeah. So
back you're getting.
So I think right now, not yet. I think the two areas, I'd say, to the point you just made, I think a project like this can't be everything to everyone. And so I think the hardest part right now is kind of navigating out what are those core relationships and what are those core experiences, and where there might be a cool idea, if it's not a part of that core, how do we navigate that? Because I don't ever want someone to feel like there's not a place for a relationship to grow. But it's really important that at this infancy, we control that. And so I think navigating that is going to be a challenge, because like you said, it's exciting. So everybody and their brother would love to be a part of it. And so it really is navigating that. And then to your point, we're not at a place in the process yet that this is a public problem. And problem might not be the right word, but we're going to get to a point soon where validating the experience through the lens of someone that expects school to be very much like what they experienced, is going to be the hardest part. Because right, as a dad of a soon-to-be kindergartner, I learned this year that like this idyllic view in my head and the reality of the process and grind don't always come eye to eye. And so for me, I think it's, it goes back to that thought of like foreshadowing that and being prepared both, internally. There are going to be people in the education space that think what we're going to do isn't going to work, or it's not important. And then there's going to be students and parents that, they think, hey, the only way for me to get into Purdue is to do A, B, and C, and that doesn't fit the mold. And then there's going to be other people that might not be opposers, but they just don't care. And so figuring out how to again, create experiences that help people understand, but also it's okay to design past people too. And what I mean by that is I will always respect and have empathy for someone's viewpoint, but that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to shift or change the experience that we create. And I think navigating and balancing those two things, where I want to make sure that everybody is heard and valued, but that doesn't always mean that it impacts what things look like when we have our first student walk through the door.
Sure. And I feel like that comes back to core values, saying who are we, what do we want to be, who do we want to appeal to? And then, like you said, not everyone's going to agree. I feel like especially the wrinkle, well, let alone it's tax dollars. So, people should have a say, but But I feel like also with entrepreneurs and musicians, I mean, these are small segments of the population. And because of that, they've been kind of alienated in the school system. And appealing to them is probably going to not appeal to the masses, where you're unlocking something that the city needs. But since the masses can't relate, because most people haven't started their own business and never will, have no intention of it, it's going to be hard to convince them that, like you said, if the goal, the goal for so many for so long is like college, go to college, go to college. No matter what you want to do, go to college and you'll be okay. Where now I think people are waking up with all this debt and saying, like, for what? Some people
Yeah.
need it, but some people it's like, well, what did I even do that for? Or why did I go halfway and get 20 grand in debt and then quit? So this to me is like opening the door to another path where you might not need the debt and you can kind of stoke that fire in you that you didn't know was there or you didn't have an outlet for before based on means or exposure.
Yeah. And I think, I think we have an incredible opportunity to kind of do two things. One, put skills at the center of the experience. So no matter what a kid does after, hopefully they've gained a skill set that applies to a variety of potential paths, but then also develop avenues that can do both. It can meet niche skill sets and avenues. So if I have a kid that's really interested in creative arts, that there's relationships and experiences that help them explore that. But if I also have a kid that's really interested in, working with a large entity like Do It Best or Sweetwater, that have multiple entry points, whether it be logistics, whether it be supply chain, whether it be e-commerce, whether it be sales and marketing, right? That the students kind of can gain experiences that cross that whole gamut. And so I think you're right. Like, I think the hard part is in society and ecosystems, we always get attached to a kind of a predefined either path or a predefined desired outcome. But like you said, the reality of that is a lot of times the path is never a straight line and the outcome never looks like what we thought it was going to. And so I think if we can keep those skills and those experiences as focused, but also as expanding and all encompassing in terms of potential paths after high school, then I think people will see the value really quick. Because when they start to hire these kids and they see the difference in the type of skilled collaborator and thinker and communicator that they are, a company can always train someone on a very specific area, right? I can learn myself. If I learn how to be a learner, I think about people probably like you and me, the things we love, we've probably spent, as Gladwell says, 10,000 hours really perfecting our crafts. And so I think if this experience can unlock that for kids, who cares what they do next? But if we can put that investment back into our own community, I think the mass will see, hey, we're not just creating a bunch of stereotypical 18-year-old retail fast food workers. We're creating, the lever that is the change in the Fort Wayne marketplace.
Man, this is, at the risk of sounding dramatic, I mean, this is some pretty big, heavy stuff. I mean, you're talking about a shift in the way we're educating our citizens and the children of our children. So that's wild, man. You got me fired up, just like I did.
Yeah.
Like I did the first time we talked. I was almost yelling at you. So when you said it'll be ready August 22, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And you're on track for that.
Yeah. So we're blessed that we're in a standalone building on the campus off of Sweeney. And so we're the only tenant in that building. So when it's ready for us, it's ready. And so we're going to be able to hit that ground running with that. And I'm blessed, right, to be in this position to make sure that all of those checkmark logistical elements happen between now and that time, so that, come that first day of school, we're doors open, welcome our first class, and we're not behind schedule at all.
That's fantastic. Well, Riley, this was amazing. I'd hope you'd be open to doing a follow-up maybe down the road. I don't know at what point, but when you start hitting some milestones, we'd love to have you back on, man. This is really exciting, especially now that I'm glad that we connected now. Just to show you the power of social media, I think it was your brother, who I don't even know, I'm connected to on Facebook, and shared you. And I was like, I got to talk to him. And so Here we are. So
right.
I'm glad we caught you early on in the process, or at least, somewhat early. And I'd love to, maybe if you're open to it, check in down the road and just let us know how it's going, good, bad, ugly,
And I'm right there with you, because I think about this 24/7 now, right? But it's very much in that stage where things are starting to become real. But you're right. A year from now, this conversation probably would be drastically different, given what all goes into that. And even like you said, my goal is to keep those core values the same, but the iteration of the experience and what it looks like will probably continue to evolve. So we're grateful for the opportunity, but we know ultimately, like you said, this is going to be a linchpin in two ways. It's going to be a linchpin for the city of Fort Wayne and the Electric Works campus, because I think everyone knows if you can empower 12 to 18-year-olds, good things will happen. But like you said, I really think we're set up to be in a position to really challenge the narrative of what teaching and learning in Fort Wayne can and could look like moving forward. So it's awesome. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I want to wrap up the same way I do every episode. What's your favorite thing about living in Fort Wayne?
Yeah, so funny, as someone that just recently moved back, we didn't leave Fort Wayne because we didn't like it. But, being on for almost 6 years, the amount of stuff to do as a 35-year-old is something that as a 21-year-old I never thought existed, right? Yeah. But it's just the transformation of the city to really become a place that not only can you raise your family, but you can be active participants in the culture of the city is killer. We've loved it so much coming back, and whether it's a classic like the zoo, or whether it's Promenade Park, it's just been so much fun to kind of relearn how awesome of a place Fort Wayne is. Because as a kid growing up in Allen County, your view of Fort Wayne is very different than it is as a somewhat middle-aged man with a family.
Yeah, I'm in the same shoes. I was gone. I left in 2000. I don't know. I went off to college, left in 2007, I think, came back in 2019 as well. And it's changed so much. And I love that. I feel like it's in this cool little sweet spot where it's big enough that we're starting to have resources and things are starting to happen, but it's small enough that if you really want to, you can be a part of it. And, I interviewed the mayor, if that tells you anything. I have absolutely no business interviewing the mayor. You know what I mean? And it's small enough that you can get connected if you want to. So it's this cool little window right now. I think we're going to look back and realize that this was a really important time in our city's history. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. So,
amen. Well, thank you.
Yeah. And how can people connect with you? If they want to follow along with either connect with you, or if they want to follow this process, how can they do that?
Yeah. So real simple. On social media, I'm at rmjohnson45 on Twitter and Instagram. But even so, as much if you hear this and you're interested in learning more, my email is just riley.johnson at fwcs.k12.in.us. So don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's, hey, I want to learn more, or you think that your personal or company organization could be a value add. I'd love to talk.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Well, Riley, you're the man. I appreciate your time today. I'm excited about what you're doing. We'll definitely be following along. And again, thanks for spending the time with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake.